For love or money, of all the 7 deadly sins, lust and greed fit together like hand and glove.
She was in the streets as far as like, stripping and making money.
Providing each other's needs on a very basic level.
Valuing love and money equally can blur the line between which is which.
She feels like she was manipulated into this situation.
She would just collaborate with him for money. I don't think she was unaware.
And between what's right and what's wrong.
Right is right, wrong is wrong.
How much is too high a price to pay for love?
People are shooting within the house. People have gone outside and started shooting as well.
I was tracking him down like a dog, pretty much.
And how many lies must we tell ourselves to justify choices we make in the name of money, but are really for the sake of our heart?
Whatever the situation was, it could have been prevented.
March 14th, 2016, St. Louis, Missouri. It's just after dark on Natural Bridge Avenue in the city's North Side neighborhood.
Natural Bridge Avenue runs the length of North St. Louis.
This area of St. Louis is known to have a very high crime and murder rate.
Suddenly, gunshots shatter the quiet evening. St. Louis Metropolitan Police's 911 call center is swamped.
One caller doesn't just give the location where the shots were fired, he gives the name of the victim.
The 911 operator instantly recognizes the name, Andre Dre Montgomery Jr.
At 21, Dre Montgomery is a national reality TV star.
Dre is the grandson of Robbie Montgomery, star of Welcome to Sweetie Pies. Anyone who watched the show would instantly recognize Dre Montgomery's name.
911 dispatches officers and EMS to the scene. Will they arrive in time to save a youngest member of a show business dynasty? Andre Montgomery was born in San Diego, California, to Andre Montgomery Sr. and Michelle Griggs.
Andre was born on my birthday, October the 14th.
But even before his due date, Dre's life was marked by tragedy.
Little Dre was 8 months old when his dad passed away. When Big Dre died, he was murdered.
In the aftermath of the tragedy, Michelle Griggs relocated newborn Dre and her 3 other children to her hometown of Lubbock, Texas.
With what she's been through, Michelle needed the emotional support of her family in Texas.
Family, especially baby Dre, became Michelle's anchor.
Andre and Big Dre share the same traits. Andre looked big image like his dad. In their personalities, always telling jokes, just lively.
He'll do something to make you laugh, do something to make you mad.
And just like Big Dre, Little Dre looked out for his family.
He just really cared about his family, so we had a really good relationship.
And Big Dre's family, headed by local St. Louis celebrity Robbie Montgomery, was there for them too.
I really appreciate a lot of things that she would talk to me about, that I had to keep going on regardless because my kids depend on me. She gave me a lot of motherly advice.
Ms. Robbie positively doted on Little Dre.
She spoiled him. She would send him big, elaborate gifts for Christmas. They always knew that the bigger box was for Andre.
I believe Robbie loved him because that was her oldest son, and he looked just like his dad.
Around the age of 7 or so, Andre started to actually go to stay in St. Louis with Miss Robbie for the summer or for certain holidays.
Dre's relationship with his uncle, Tim Norman, proved just as important.
James Timothy Norman is Miss Robbie's second son.
Tim was a positive role model for Dre. Dre looked up to Tim.
With Miss Michelle's blessing, Dre was brought into the St. Louis Sides family business, a successful chain of restaurants, and Welcome to Sweetie Pies, a wildly popular reality show about Robbie and Tim running them as mother and son.
The Welcome to Sweetie Pies show ran for nearly a decade.
She said, we got the show going on, and I've been mentioned by my grandson, and people want to know and meet who Andre is.
Eventually, there was some conversation between the family members, between the Griggs family and the Montgomery family about Andre coming from Texas to stay in St. Louis and finish out high school with Miss Robbie.
You're out of Lubbock, your grandma's pretty well off, so maybe you have better resources over there that we don't have here.
With his grandma Robbie and Uncle Tim's help, Dre finished high school and became a central character on Welcome to Sweetie Pies.
You had Miss Robbie, who was older, so you had the seniors. You had Tim, who was in his 30s at the time, and you had Charles and Andre, who connected with the younger audience.
Now, St. Louis police are rushing to Andre Montgomery's aid. Outside the house, first responders encounter a young man still conscious, despite gunshot wounds in his arm and upper chest. But it's not Dre Montgomery.
Bystanders had told her that Dre Montgomery has gone back inside.
Police followed a trail of blood that led directly to the dining room.
In the dining room, Dre Montgomery lies face down, bleeding from his chest and lower back.
Andre was pronounced dead on the scene.
What could have happened here? Who wanted Dre Montgomery dead, and why? An epic search for answers will uncover a diabolical conspiracy fueled by greed and lies. Though only 21 years old, aspiring rapper Andre Montgomery had already brought joy into thousands of lives.
Dre was one of the stars of a hugely popular reality TV show, Welcome to Sweetie Pies, alongside with his grandma, Robbie Montgomery, and his uncle, Tim Norman.
But on March 14, 2016, investigators in North St. Louis arrive at the scene to find one man injured and Dre Montgomery dead.
Police investigators see shell casings scattered across the grass in the front of the home, as well as when they enter the home, they see other bullet casings as well as Andre's body.
Detectives discovered one handgun on the kitchen floor, two more alongside a rifle on the bed, and a third handgun on top of the dresser.
Preliminary examination of the shell casings, both inside and out, suggests multiple shooters.
The fact that there was more than one shooter indicates that it's possible this is gang-related.
St. Louis Metro Police interview each of the 7 people in the house at the time of the shootings.
Andre was in a recording session in the basement working on some music tracks.
While in the basement studio, Andre receives that call saying, "Hey, I'm here."
Dre's friends say it sounded like a woman on the other end of the phone.
Dre's friend says he was actually expecting a call, but they had no knowledge of the woman that he spoke to.
Dre then responds to them saying, "I'll be right back." Dre then exits the home alone, and a few minutes later, they hear the gunfire ringing out.
Dre's friends admit that after Dre was shot outside, the second shooting happened inside.
When they heard the shots at Dre, the young man who was in the back bedroom with his 2-year-old daughter grabbed his handgun and started to come out of his room and then proceed through the house to see what was happening. At that point, he sees a gun and it was dark. Well, come to find out, that was a friend of Dre's who actually was coming up as well to try to defend the people that were in the house. At that point, everyone is rushing into the dining room. People are shooting within the house. People have gone outside and started shooting as well. And Andre, all the while, is laid in that dining room floor.
The young man that police first encountered outside was actually shot inside. And Andre, even though he was discovered inside, was shot outside.
Officers find Dre's wallet untouched and his phone in the vestibule where he apparently dropped it while staggering back into the house.
Clearly, this was not a robbery. It's actually looking like an ambush.
detectives focus on the phone call that brought Dre out in the first place.
They were able to see the last person that he had spoken to just minutes before his life was taken.
A short time before he was killed, Dre exchanged a series of phone calls and texts with a single contact.
After the police were able to obtain access to Andre Montgomery's phone, they immediately were able to discover the last contact in his phone, which was listed as Alexis the Great.
Dre's final text was the address of the studio. Detectives surmised that Dre's murderer arrived by car, lured him outside with a call, shot him, and escaped the way they arrived.
The bullet casing, the eye and ear witness descriptions suggested that Dre Montgomery met someone outside before being shot.
Was Alexis the Great Dre's killer or just the bait? Detectives contact a judge to arrange a subpoena for Dre's service provider to reveal just who Alexis the Great is, and in the meantime, there remains the heartbreaking business of identifying the body.
Dre's immediate family was in Lubbock and Tim was out of town. So it fell to Ms. Robbie herself to make the identification.
In Lubbock, Texas, Michelle Griggs answers her phone.
It was 2 o'clock in the morning when I received that phone call from Robbie. And she said the detective they just left here wanted me to go down to the board to identify Andre's body, see if it's Andre.
It was the longest few minutes of her life.
I called my sister and I called my girls and my cousin. I told them, I said, y'all need to come over right now because Robbie just told me that Andre's dead. So they all came around and we all praying and hoping that somebody had stole his ID and that it wasn't him. So in the midst of us standing around, she called back. And she said, yeah, it's Dre. At that point, I don't remember what happened. They said I fainted, they said I passed out, I don't know. But I knew that it hurt.
She was in like physical pain, you know. She was nonstop crying. Something I could say or do that would stop her pain. So, you know, that was probably one of the most difficult parts of my life.
When detectives ask Miss Robbie if Dre had been involved in anything unusual, she tells them that not long before the shooting, someone broke into her home.
Because her alarm system had been deactivated, that limited the suspects to Miss Robbie, Tim, and Andre. At the time when her house was burglarized, Miss Robbie was in LA with her son, Tim Norman, while Andre was still in St. Louis, and so they immediately accused Andre of breaking into the house, which he denied vehemently.
Dre's Texas family didn't believe it for a second.
When Robbie's house got broken into, she called me and she told me that she found out that Dre was the one that had robbed her. And I was like, when would Dre rob you?
He's not a thief, he doesn't steal. He'll ask to borrow $20 versus him taking money. He's never been anyone to steal anything from anybody.
Dre had actually returned to St. Louis in order to clear his name with a polygraph test.
The only reason why Andre came back is because he wanted to prove to his grandma that he loved that he did not do that.
Andre was cleared by the St. Louis Police Department of having any involvement with the burglary based on his polygraph results.
So far, nothing's adding up.
Who want to hurt my brother? Did he get set up? Did he get jumped? Was it for the money? Did he get robbed? Did his friends set him up?
Everything pointed back to the mystery woman who had called Dre just before he was shot.
Police in St. Louis, Missouri are on the trail of an unidentified female who lured 21-year-old rapper and reality TV star Andre Montgomery to his death.
All they have to go on is a series of phone calls and texts from a phone contact, Alexis the Great.
St. Louis homicide digital forensics specialists analyzing Dre Montgomery's phone make a breakthrough discovery.
The final text and calls to Dre's phone from Alexis DeGrate were made from a burner phone.
It turns out that Alexis DeGrate had been in contact with Dre in the days leading up to the murder. And she called and texted Dre from an actual registered cell phone.
A new subpoena reveals a name: Terica Tanisha Ellis.
Terica Ellis was an exotic dancer based in Memphis, Tennessee.
St. Louis police contact their counterparts in Memphis.
Memphis police confirmed that Terica Ellis had a pair of vice convictions on her record, but nothing more.
Despite the tantalizing new evidence, police have to play a waiting game. They issue a bolo for Terica Ellis.
We know the last person he talked to, even by not doing anything. That's when I started realizing that St. Louis, had a lot of violent crimes there, so a lot of people was getting murdered as well.
So once they would work on Andre's case, they would get a call to go out to another case. So they'll try to get on top of that one before that one will get lost.
Dre's grieving mother made solving her son's murder her mission in life.
I wasn't about to let him be a statistic, and I told him that. I said he would not be a statistic. He would not be a box that you're going to put on the shelf, sit there and get dust without me finding out who did this.
Dre's mother contacted St. Louis police almost daily.
My mom, she kept calling. She would call and call and call. We'll talk on the phone just randomly. I'm like, hey, Mom, did you call?
I would continue to call. I would continue to pray at night. I would continue to tell God what I want. And if I didn't get the answers, I just kept faith. And I kept calling. And I kept calling.
In her nearly daily calls to St. Louis, Miss Michelle shared something else with police.
Miss Michelle and the rest of Dre's Lubbock family were very surprised by the way that his Uncle Tim had responded after the murder.
When Andre passed, Tim did not reach out to me when Andre passed. Not at all.
And at Dre's Lubbock church service and burial, Tim Norman seemed disconnected.
Tim shook my hand and looked down when he kind of shook my hand, and I thought that was odd. As a man to man, you look a man in his eyes when you shake his hand. It's just the way I was raised.
But overworked St. Louis police need concrete leads, not suspicions.
When I had talked to detectives, they thought it was just like a little family squabble. They never really paid it to mind.
Tim Norman wasn't even in St. Louis the day that Dre Montgomery was killed, and why would he want his nephew dead in the first place?
For more than 2 years, Dre's family's nightmare of not knowing continues.
My life became just, trying to figure out what happened to my brother, because we, just trying to get the answer. Trying to get closure is what it is. I was just trying to get closure.
And I would call him, and I would talk to him, and I would get the same thing over and over and over. It's a cold case. We can't go no forward.
If that's what it was that'll make me stop hating the world, stop being so dark and stop being so evil, just to see what happened to my brother.
Then, finally, police catch another break. And this time, it might just move the needle. St. Louis Metro Police detectives get a call about the case from a surprising place: their own system's jail.
Deputies assigned to sift through inmate calls had learned something they needed to pass along.
An inmate held in the county jail was recorded on a phone call with his brother.
The inmate's brother was bragging about how he killed a man for money.
The recording captured Travell Hill laughing about a shooting that earned him $5,000, and he names his victim, Andre Montgomery.
This will be the key to the mystery of Dre Montgomery's murder.
What detectives subsequently discover will put them back on the trail to Terica Ellis. For almost 2 years, Andre Montgomery's murder during a recording session in North St. Louis has gone unsolved.
Dre was shot the day he went outside to meet a woman whom he had exchanged calls and texts with.
Police have potentially identified the woman as Terica Ellis, but a nationwide bolo has yet to turn up the Memphis-born exotic dancer.
She had to surface eventually. All it could take was a traffic stop.
In the meantime, a tip from within the St. Louis Division of Corrections might just break the case wide open.
A man named Travell Hill was bragging about Dre Montgomery's murder with his incarcerated brother.
He had a prior criminal history, but none of them were violent crimes. They were all drug related.
When detectives confront Hill with what they know from his phone call, the reluctant hitman caves almost immediately.
For him to go to that next level of taking another human's life was really something that was hard for him to grapple with.
Travell Hill said he was paid $5,000 to kill Dre Montgomery.
And when detectives ask him who paid him, he freely admits that, too.
He was paid the $5,000 by Tim Norman, Dre's uncle.
Travell Anthony Hill was approached by one of Tim's confidants and told that Tim had said that he needed to take the life of Andre.
Tim Norman tells Travell that he'll be contacted shortly and told where to find Dre Montgomery. But that contact won't come from him. It will be via a woman, Terica Ellis.
Terica Ellis is from Memphis, Tennessee. She is one of 3 children. She has a brother and a sister. She was very close to her mom and had some relationship with her father as well. It is also reported that Terica did not have a picture-perfect life. It was expressed that she experienced many abuses by the men in her life, both emotionally and sexually. Terica Ellis was also a teen parent.
From what I understand, she was in the streets as far as stripping and making money and stuff like that.
In the early 2000s, Terica started to really get into her career in the adult industry by becoming a featured exotic dancer, traveling across the country, as well as escorting on the side.
One of Terica's regular spots was a string of Illinois stripper bars just across the river from St. Louis. It was there that she encountered a man who would change her life forever.
Eventually, her career in exotic dancing and escorting led her to meet Tim Norman at the Bottoms Up Club in Brooklyn, Illinois. Within a couple days, they had their first hookup, which led them into a multi-year situationship.
At first, Terica saw Tim solely as a regular source of income.
She's going to be attracted to that money and fame because it's there. So as long as it's there, she's going to be there.
Tim, a married father, liked the no strings attached policy Terica agreed to.
I think Tim's attraction to Terica was accessibility.
But their relationship began to take on a special meaning to a woman that had struggled to get the finer things out of life for herself and her daughter.
I feel like Terica fell for Tim, or was like falling for his goofiness, because she seen, he is on TV.
You think it's all about the money at first, but when people stay close for that long, there's usually something going on underneath.
In this unique situationship, honestly, both Tim and Terica were just providing each other's needs on a very basic level.
Terica tried to tell herself that this was strictly a friends with benefits situation, but she grew to really care about Tim Norman.
Tim, in turn, grew to rely on Terica, and it wasn't just for sex.
Tim knew that she was somebody that he can kind of control and make do what he wanted her to do.
Travell Hill says that when Andre Montgomery returned to St. Louis in the spring of 2016, a chance encounter with Terica sealed his fate.
She had met Andre, I think, that day before.
And when Tim Norman learned that Terica had caught Andre's eye, he used her as bait.
Tim then asked Terica if she would be able to reach out to Andre and see if he would respond. Tim then dictated what Terica should text to Dre. Dre responds, and from there on, the back and forth was orchestrated by Tim.
Travell says Terica kept texting with Andre until he agreed to meet her and forwarded his address at the Natural Bridge Avenue studio.
It was tracking him down like a dog, pretty much.
Terica forwarded the address to Tim.
He gives her the further instructions, which were to text Andre from the burner phone and tell him to only communicate with her from that phone number from that point on, because her other phone was no longer working. Tim communicates that to Terica, who then gives Travell the address on Natural Bridge. Travell shows up, parks his car around the corner down the street, stays in wait in the gangway between the houses.
Andre gets the call from Terica that he's been waiting for and comes outside.
Andre goes to Terica's car, is in there a minute or two, returns, and as Andre is walking in the home, Travell takes aim, shoots at him 5 times, and then Travell takes off running around the corner, jumping into his car, and he reported that he went straight to a bar and drank himself into oblivion.
Travell tells police he never saw Terica again.
He finally received his compensation a couple days later.
Detectives now know who killed Andre Montgomery, who tracked him, and who wanted him dead. The remaining question is, why?
As they started digging more into it, they started uncovering a whole bunch of stuff, that was there in plain sight.
So at that point, the motive was definitely money.
For nearly a half-decade, detectives in St. Louis, Missouri have been searching for answers in the Andre Montgomery murder case.
Dre was gunned down outside of a recording studio in North St. Louis at 8 p.m.
Now, with confessed gunman Travell Hill in custody, police are convinced they've also identified the mastermind behind the crime.
They know Tim had something to do with it, but they couldn't prove it at that time.
The murder-for-hire case, with several key players in different states, attracts the attention of the FBI.
You have 3 people scattered over 3 states, all using cell phones to carry out a murder conspiracy.
But missing pieces remain. Just what was Tim Norman's motive for engineering this deadly trap?
Tim Norman risked everything, paying thousands of dollars to Terica and Travell. Why?
You can't prove guilt without motive, and so far there's no clear motive.
I think it's really hard to gauge when the issue started with Andre and Tim. Tim maybe had a level of jealousy with Andre the entire time.
After years of calling St. Louis police for updates, Michelle Griggs receives a call of her own from St. Louis Metro Homicide.
Detective Murphy called me, and he was like, do you know anything about a life insurance on your son? And I was like, no.
Tim Norman had attempted to apply for 5 separate life insurance policies through various insurance agencies for Andre Montgomery.
When Dre moved to St. Louis to complete high school, Tim Norman used the opportunity to obtain his ID and Social Security information.
Tim reached back out to her and said, hey, by the way, I'll need a copy of his birth certificate, his Social Security number, and some other personal documentation.
With that information, Tim was able to get the life insurance on Andre.
Detectives were finally able to determine that Tim Norman had in fact been at the helm of the murder-for-hire plot against his very own nephew, Andre Montgomery.
Using federal subpoena power, FBI agents dig into Terica Ellis's finances and document that in the days immediately after the murder, Ellis deposited about $9,000 across several bank accounts in her name. Investigators suspect that money was her cut from the murder for hire of Dre Montgomery.
It takes a while to tie it all together. The cell call, the text, the burner phone, the deposits.
On August 20th, 2020, Miss Michelle gets another call from police.
I got an outside phone call, and it was Detective Rudolph. He said, just wanted you to know we just arrested Terica. I screamed and I shouted for joy.
And just 24 hours later, there's more good news.
Phone rang again, and it was Detective Rudolph. And he said, just want you to know we have arrested Tim Norman for the murder of your son, Andre Montgomery. It was victory, praise. My prayers came true because we've been knowing Tim did it, but the world didn't know.
In custody, Tim Norman admits nothing, but Terica cooperates fully.
When Terica Ellis was arrested, she was a key piece of this puzzle.
Terica tells detectives that it all started in the aftermath of a hookup with Tim Norman.
She was telling Tim that she was trying to open up a boutique in Memphis and had plans to travel to LA in a few weeks to go to the garment district to purchase products for her store.
Terica wanted out of the escort game and believed that Tim Norman wanted that for her too.
He then asked Terica if she was familiar with his nephew, and Terica tells him that in fact she was, because Andre had been a patron in the Bottoms Up Club and had tipped her a lot of cash in the weeks prior.
Tim Norman could now put his murder-for-hire plan into action. At Tim's insistence, Terica reaches out to Dre, giving him her new number with a burner phone Tim bought her.
Terica then travels to the La Quinta Inn Hotel where Andre was located. She spends less than 10 minutes there talking to Dre, finding out what he's up to and what he's planning for the day.
She never mentioned that Tim was looking for him. She never mentioned that Tim was in St. Louis. She didn't mention anything about Tim. She made it seem like it was all about her wanting to be with Andre, wanting to hang out with Andre.
Terica insists that she believed that Tim was just looking to get his mother's property back.
Terica says that she did not know that Tim had the intention of taking Andre's life, and she thought that Tim only wanted her to find Dre so that he could have Dre confronted to admit to where Miss Robbie's items were from the burglary of her home.
The worst she assumed was that Dre was going to get a beat down.
Fast forward, Tim gives Terica the okay, saying that his boys are ready. Terica then reaches out to Dre to say, "Where are you exactly now?" Dre then informs her that he is at the address on the Natural Bridge.
And my brother was he was oblivious to anything. He was it was a regular day for him in St. Louis. He had no worries. He was just a regular day, just a regular day.
Upon Terica conveying that information to Tim Norman, he responds and tells her, "From here on out, reach out to my boy directly and give him the address where you will be going." We later find out that that person was Travell Anthony Hill.
Everything lined up perfectly for Tim. Before this, my brother had no chance to survive. He had so many people looking for him and tracking him down.
Terica tells investigators that she'd spent the afternoon shopping and checking in with Andre.
They start talking about Dre being in need of an outfit, and she offered to purchase him an expensive pair of jeans.
And it was the jeans that lured Dre outside the home studio on Natural Bridge Avenue.
She arrives at the address on Natural Bridge. She has communicated with Travell and they have coordinated. Terica calls Dre, lets him know that she is outside with his jeans. Dre then comes outside, gets in the car with Terica. There's some small talk that lasted less than 2 to 3 minutes. And Terica says that Andre's phone rang, and as it rang, he answered and started to get out of the car. Right before Travell Anthony Hill takes his first shot, he texts Terica as Andre is getting out of the car to move. She then immediately, as she says, peeled off, and she instantly started hearing gunshots.
Terica insists that she'd never been more shocked and scared in her life.
After hearing those gunshots while driving away, Terica calls Tim Norman and says, "What the F?" And she asks, "Should I go back and check on Dre?" Tim Norman responds and says, "No, get out of town, get on the highway, go to Memphis, and don't come back to St. Louis," and toss that burner phone.
Armed with confessions from Terica Ellis and Travell Hill, investigators quickly secure indictments for Tim Norman and his co-conspirators. But will a conviction be as easy to obtain?
At the time I wasn't happy, but there's nothing I can do it because I already said that whatever his will will be done.
In September of 2022, 6 years after Andre Montgomery was gunned down on a North St. Louis street, the man accused of orchestrating his murder is about to face a jury.
The trial was a long time in coming, and then the pandemic pushed it back even further.
But as Dre's family takes their seats in the courtroom, they're reminded that Tim Norman still maintains his innocence.
When we first walked into the courtroom, they had our family next to Tim.
I don't know if that was by mistake or an accident, but, you know, we was sitting right there in the first row, and I was just staring at him, just staring.
It made me so upset. Like, I was thinking all kinds of ways, like, you just right here. You know, you just right here. If I could just get a hold of you, you know?
And he was looking around, and we made eye contact again, and I think he lipped. I didn't do it.
He did this to my older brother, like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
It was real quick, and I'm like, did he really just do that? And I was thinking, like, did I just really see that?
Right out of the gate, the prosecution insists otherwise.
It is very clear and was made clear through the trial that James Timothy Norman was in fact the mastermind, primarily because of the fact that he is the only person who was connected to all three co-conspirators.
The testimony of Tim's co-conspirators seals the deal.
Terica Ellis and Travell Hill both take the stand. Together, they paint a vivid picture of Tim Norman's conspiracy and actions.
I knew that the evidence stacked against him was overwhelming. It was just, you know, throughout the whole trial process, it's like, man, there's so much information that came out. There's no way he could be found, you know, anything but guilty.
On September 16th, 2022, after 7 days of testimony, the jury hands down its verdict. Tim Norman conspired to have Andre Montgomery murdered and committed insurance fraud.
When I heard the guilty verdict, I was excited. I was so happy. I couldn't even contain it, but the judge told us no outbursts.
It was like, okay, finally, you know, we got justice for my brother, Andre.
We all got up after the jury left, and we got in our family prayer circle, and we prayed, and we did our intense yes, because we got victory.
Tim's subsequent sentencing was a victory lap for Dre's family.
When they told us Tim got a double life sentence plus 20 years, couldn't get no better than that. If the death penalty was available, I wish he would have got that. But living in prison forever, you'll never be able to harm or hurt nobody else.
I think my mom, she, you know, her job was done. You know, she got justice for Andre. He wasn't gonna be another statistic.
Terica's sentence, negotiated as part of a plea deal, is not as well received.
When Terica was sentenced for 3 years, including the time she already served, I wasn't happy. But at the same time, as a family, we fasted and prayed, and we let God, let your will be done.
The 3 years that she got, they angered us, but we understood why, talking to the team, that we was after the bigger fish in Tim, which is obviously the main point we wanted to get, but we still felt that she should have got more time than what she got.
Travell Hill's plea deal earns him a 32-year sentence.
Through this entire process, Terica definitely has had regret.
Nobody would have thought that it was Tim that had this control over the Terica situation, but that's the reason why everybody's really laughing at Terica.
Her background, you know, I mean, it was bad, but, you know, we all have bad backgrounds. She's an adult. She lured my brother, who was a lot younger than her, to do the things that she wanted him to do and to get him in the places that she wanted him to be.
Tim and Terica, they took the joy out of our family. Tim and Terica took the light out of our family. You know, that was, my mother, it was 3 boys, 3 girls, 2 A's, 2 K's, 2 D's. It ain't none of that no more. My mother and Dre share the same birthday. Every year she got to deal with that. So every year we got to try to figure out a way to keep her happy, keep her uplifted and stuff like that. As a family, we shouldn't have to go through that.
Some people want to put a price on everything. But what matters most? Love, freedom, family, life itself can't be broken down to mere dollars and cents. And sometimes that lesson can only be learned when our hearts are broken, our freedom vanishes, and the bonds of family are severed forever.
Anthony was a great person, man. Kind-hearted, loved his kids, and he'll give you the shirt off his back. When we got the news, I got to like a corner, and I just balled up, man, and was just crying because I couldn't believe it.
He spotted someone sort of pop out from behind the house wearing all black.
Multiple gunshots ring out, followed by the sound of screeching tires.
He was definitely a nice-looking, fine guy. His eyes was beautiful. His smile just lit up a room. My mom came running down the stairs and let me know that my brother had passed. So I was kind of in shock, not really registering it. Didn't make sense to me.
He was gasping for air. He was foaming at the mouth.
They were immediately struck by a very strong smell of bleach.
I've been on hundreds of crime scenes. We've seen it all. I'd never seen anything like this before.
Crimes like these are usually from somebody you know, somebody you're close with, somebody intimate.
There was a lot of talk in the neighborhood of this girl going around pretty much bragging.
She said what happened to him was payback.
She gets upset, something happens, and she uses violence.
She, in fact, was proud that she had won the fight.
It's a cool March night in 2017 when Chicago PD receives a call from the Inglewood neighborhood on the city's south side.
On March 6, 2017, at approximately 1:30 in the morning, there was a 911 call from a woman who was calling for help to the 6500 block of South Bishop Street.
She tells them that her friend Darius, who's 26 years old at the time, is at her door and he is foaming at the mouth and can barely breathe.
The victim made his way up to the second floor apartment.
He was in the hallway on the ground. They let him in and he crawled inside and lay on his back. Stretched out on the ground, difficulty breathing. He was foaming from the mouth, his eyes were streaming, and his face was blue, like he was lacking oxygen.
The first responders notice a familiar but toxic odor.
There was an overpowering smell of bleach.
The Chicago Police Department ambulance immediately transported Darius to Stroger Hospital, which is one of our best level 1 trauma hospitals.
Darius Ellis was born in 1990 and raised in Inglewood. He grew up with his 10 siblings nearby.
We have a big family. We all grew up around each other. My father made it very clear that he wanted us to be close, so the age gap between me and Darius is only 3 years. My mom likes to call us 2 peas in a pod. We grew up about 4 blocks away from each other. For quite some time, his mom stayed literally maybe 4 to 5 blocks away from my mother, and we were there for 15 plus years. So we were very close, like, to each other. We would hang out every day. He would say I was his little big sister because of the way I treated. Reluctant to tell me things if he did something wrong. That's how much I was more of the serious one, the one that really wanted him to, like, just be his best.
In the 90s, Inglewood was a close-knit community.
We could play all night with no issues, like, till the streetlights came on. We played basketball in the alleys with crates and played it and rode bikes, and were able to just be kids at one point, and it seemed like at the drop of a dime, everything shifted, and we had to worry about shootings and, you know, a lot more violent things.
As Darius grew older, he took an interest in working out and weightlifting.
He's always been really active. He would lift weights. He didn't need to go to a gym. He could set up right at home, like, and he would just get busy. And then the next thing you know, we're getting a blast of pictures with his shirt off. So he had to show off those muscles, those pecs. He would be flexing. He was just proud of the progress he was making, you know.
His physique, combined with his natural good looks, made Darius popular with the ladies.
The ladies loved him. He loved them back. He was fun, outgoing, easy.
And I definitely will say women seen how attractive he was.
At 21 years old, Darius became a father.
Darius' life changed, I feel like, drastically when he had his son. I feel like when he had his child, it gave him purpose. That love, I feel like, is immediately when Darius had his kid, he made that decision to make sure that he would be in this kid life every day, show up every day, because it was important, because we knew how it was to not have that. That void in our heart, I feel like, pushed him to just be the best. He just wanted to be the best he could be for his kid. He was a welder. He was getting into the construction business. Him and another one of my brothers as well. They both were kind of like going tit for tat with that. That was their interest.
Darius worked on various construction projects throughout the city. Darius worked on various construction projects throughout the city.
I remember him telling me about it and just being like, man, sis, I'm doing construction and it's going really well. I did this big project. Like, he was just happy about it, and I was proud of him, you know, just seeing him go for something that he loved doing.
He was well on his way to making himself known in that industry.
His relationship with his son's mother didn't last. In 2015, Darius met 22-year-old Yasmin Elder.
When they met, Yasmin wasn't really interested in Darius. She thought that he was a player. She thought that he had a lot of women. And so she didn't really want to invest her time there. But eventually, he was able to charm her, wear her down, and they entered into this relationship.
Yasmin was a bright spot, but 2017 brought big challenges as well.
He was a welder, but he was living in his van at the time, in between jobs, just down on his luck.
With welding and stuff, it's only certain projects you can get. So I feel like it kind of fell slow for a little bit for him. So he was struggling. Here's the thing though, Darius always have somewhere to go. He could come to my home, open arms, without a problem. And he knew that, he was aware. I just think he was just one of those strong-willed men that didn't want to budge on, you know, asking anybody for too much help. He just didn't want to be a burden. He was a strong man. He wanted to be a man. He was dealing with things.
On March 6th, Darius is rushed to a local trauma center after showing up at a friend's apartment, foaming at the mouth and reeking of bleach. Doctors spend 2 hours trying to save him.
Unfortunately, it's too late. At 3:26 in the morning, Darius is pronounced dead at the hospital.
I was working as and they stated they had a deceased victim at Stroger Hospital. I arrived in the early morning hours. It was probably around 4:00 a.m. And I went to the emergency room where I spoke to the doctor about the details of the deceased, and he stated that the victim had some type of caustic substance poured onto his face and his nose area. He said that the caustic substance that was in his nose and mouth would have burned his throat and caused it to swell, thereby causing him to suffocate.
In the morgue, detectives get confirmation as to what that substance was.
They opened up the body bag and were immediately struck by a very strong smell of bleach. Police detectives inspected Darius's clothing, and it was a very strong odor.
Out of the bag to examine it, and I came across a black hooded sweatshirt that had the distinct spill pattern around the neck area, and it was discolored orange from the black. And through my rubber gloves, I could feel that the clothing was completely soaked. Because of the large amount of bleach involved, this led me to believe that this was not self-inflicted, that we had a murder on our hands.
The detective was able to determine that this was foul play pretty much immediately.
This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And who the hell would do this to someone? It just leaves you speechless.
In the early morning hours of March 6th, 2017, 26-year-old Darius Ellis dies at a Chicago hospital after showing up at a friend's apartment in distress.
When the detective talked to the doctor said there was extensive damage done to the inside of his mouth and his throat from bleach, and the initial cause of death was asphyxiation.
The police were able to recognize that this was foul play.
I spoke to the patrol officers that were at the hospital. They gave me the particulars of the case, provided me with the name of the victim and the location of where they believed the crime may have occurred. So I finished my investigation at the hospital at that time and then relocated to the crime scene. I went up to the second floor apartment on Bishop and I spoke to a witness who turned out to be a friend of the victim, Darius Ellis.
In the apartment, we have 3 adults. We have Darius's friend, and we have the son of Darius's friend and his girlfriend.
These were the witnesses in the house who helped Darius when he knocked on the door asking for help.
Around 12:30 in the evening, Darius's lady friend heard a knock on her apartment door. And she proceeded to the door and heard Darius whisper in a raspy voice through the door, "It's me, Darius."
When she opens the door, she sees her friend Darius lying outside of her apartment on the ground, arms spread, legs spread, gasping for air.
She could hear his labored breathing. She could see that there was just a white foamy substance coming from his mouth. But what was so surprising and just astounding was that the aroma that was coming from him. And there was just that overwhelming stench of some type of cleaning chemical.
Darius tried to speak.
He told her that 2 men had held him down and poured bleach into his face.
He quickly became unable to talk, but his friend noticed he was still trying to communicate with her.
Darius couldn't talk because he was struggling to breathe, but he held up a cell phone and showed it to this woman. She did not know what he meant by this gesture, but she did know that this cell phone did not belong to Darius.
At that point, the friend became too concerned about Darius's health to try and understand what he was communicating.
She realizes very quickly that Darius is getting worse, so she has no choice but to call 911.
She points out that the flip phone was left behind when Darius was loaded into the ambulance.
The police are able to recover a few things. They get his cell phone and they also get this flip phone, and they're able to also get his car keys.
Darius's friend says that his silver minivan is still parked in front of her building.
She informed the police of what he had been doing. Lately, he's trained as a welder, but he had been in between jobs and unfortunately living in his van.
I was able to obtain the keys to Darius's minivan, and upon opening it, I was instantly overwhelmed with a very strong odor of bleach. It was so strong that I was unable to investigate the interior of the vehicle without going back to my squad car and getting a mask.
Once inside the minivan, police noticed large amounts of liquid on the windshield, on the passenger seat, and on the floor. Immediately, the police called for an evidence technician to have him swab the liquid and take photographs.
I noticed a spill pattern on the front seats of the vehicle, which caused a discoloration to the darker interior, making it orange in appearance, which matched the same spill pattern I saw on Darius's hooded sweatshirt in the hospital. Upon examining inside the vehicle, there was numerous items strewn about, clothing, and a liquid substance was all over the windshield, the seats, the floorboards, the ceiling, which was indicative of a struggle in a close quarters area.
The detective is able to confirm that this is definitely the scene of the crime.
While it's clear a struggle took place in the van, investigators don't believe Darius's claim that he was attacked by two large men.
Seeing the interior of the minivan and how cluttered it was, there was no way two big guys were pinning him down inside a minivan. The statement he made to the witnesses and the patrolman's reports led me to believe that he was trying to cover for someone.
All new True Crime Monday.
Darius had a bad habit of smoking cigarettes. And he liked to call me his big little sister because anytime he would come around me, he would forget. And he'll pull out a cigarette and he would forget. And he'll pull out a cigarette and I'll snatch it out of his hand and I'll break it. And he used to be like so upset. He's like, man, I just bought that pack. I'm like, dude, you're not doing that. We're not having that. That's one of the funniest memories I think I have with him all the time. Another one was his will of asking everybody, don't we look alike? Don't we look alike? That's my sister. He was so proud to be my big brother. Like, that was something that I always would like carry with me. Everywhere we go, everybody I introduced him to, he would just be like, don't we look alike? That's my little sister. That's my real sister. You know, so it made me feel like he was just proud to be, you know, my brother. And that meant a lot.
It's high noon. In March of 2017, Chicago detectives are in the Inglewood neighborhood investigating the bizarre death of 26-year-old Darius Ellis. After processing the van where they suspect Darius was forced to drink bleach, they scour the area for evidence.
We were looking for a carton or something, type of container that could hold the bleach, and we checked the garbage cans nearby, we checked the empty lot.
Before they leave, they ask Darius's friend who the single father spent time with.
She responded that Darius had a history of being a ladies' man, but that lately he had actually been dedicating all of his time and energy to one woman in particular, 24-year-old Yasmin.
Yasmin lived a few blocks away. She was a few years younger than he was. She was living with her relatives, uncle, her grandparents.
Before they talk to Yasmin, investigators learn that the Cook County Medical Examiner has completed Darius's autopsy.
The doctors concluded that the pH level in Darius's stomach was at 12 to 13, which is more than double the amount of a normal human's pH level.
The chemical makeup or whatever of bleach would cause your throat and mouth to swell so quickly that instantly closes like a fist and you die from suffocating. He couldn't breathe. He died because he got asphyxiated. His findings were that Darius's death was caused by the forced administration of a caustic substance. It's officially ruled a homicide. I've been on hundreds of crime scenes before. Big city detective, we've seen it all. I've never seen anything like this before. This was murder with bleach. Unusual.
poison her.
As far as who could be responsible, Darius's family is at a loss.
Darius didn't have any enemies. He got along with his ex, he had a close relationship with his son.
To be honest with you, I don't even understand what motive anyone would have to want to poison someone and kill them.
Later that day, detectives asked the woman who called 911 to come to the station for a follow-up interview. She relays a troubling story.
The friend told police that on the night of the incident, when Darius was taken to the hospital, that she walked down to Darius's family's home so that she could relate to them what had happened. On her way to their home, she ran into Yasmin Elder.
She stopped and she informed Yasmin of what had happened to Darius, and Yasmin's response, she laughed.
Yasmin's reaction to what happened to Darius and the state that he was in, the laughter is, it's troublesome.
The police asked Darius' friend if she noticed that Yasmin had any injuries on her body. Darius' friend stated that, nope, not to her. She didn't see that there were any injuries noted on Yasmin's body, but did say that Yasmin made mention that bleach had gotten into her eyes and that they were burning.
She doesn't know her last name, but tells police Yasmin lives in the neighborhood and has been in trouble with the law before.
The woman let police know that Yasmin wouldn't be hard to find. She has a distinguishable tattoo on her neck. She does have a past with law enforcement, so she's in the system.
I told my supervisor, I got a hot case going here, and it's domestic related, and we could probably solve it right now. I'm going to ask for help from the day's violent crimes guys, and they helped me out. I threw out that name Yasmin, 4-block area where she lives, and a tattoo on her neck. That's when Civisec put the parameters in, and within
woman who matches all those criteria. 24-year-old Yasmin Elder.
I was able to pull up Yasmin's arrest photo because just recently she was arrested for battery.
She had been accused of using a metal lock to hit her landlord in the head during a dispute. They find that she's currently on court supervision.
Yasmin now has an established history of being violent. It's sounding like that she gets upset, something happens, and she uses violence.
They take Yasmin's picture to Darius's friend.
Based on all of the information that the police had, they put together a photo lineup and they showed it to the woman, and the woman immediately pointed Yasmin out.
After the witnesses picked Yasmin out of a photo array, we now had probable cause to effect an arrest.
Fascinating statements made by his girlfriend, Yasmin Elder, in the hours after he died.
Yasmin laughed and said to the friend, "He shouldn't have put his hands on me."
Based on all of the information that detectives were finding out about Yasmin, her law enforcement past, the troubles that she's had, the court supervision, the battery charge, it was beginning to look more and more like maybe she did have something to do with this, and we need to talk to her immediately.
As investigators prepare to bring Yasmin in, they know that connecting her to the crime could rest in a clue Darius offered just before he lost consciousness.
He couldn't speak, so what he did was he had a phone in his hand, he held it up, and they knew that the phone wasn't his.
He was holding a phone in his hand. When they asked, "Who did this to you?" What happened? All Darius could do was point to the phone in his hand.
The key to the whole case was Darius holding up that phone.
Armed with an arrest warrant, police head back to Inglewood to look for Yasmin.
So we quickly went to the last known address where we believed Yasmin was staying, which was her grandmother's house. Yasmin wasn't home at the time, but her grandmother did state she was staying there. After speaking with the grandmother, we were able to have her sign a consent to search form in order to search the area where Yasmin was staying, looking for evidence.
They're able to go into Yasmin's room and do a search, and what do they find? They find a pair of black pants that are covered in red stains that seem like bleach stains.
Speaking to the grandmother stated those were the clothes she wore the night before when she came home and changed. We seized the pair of pants and had them recovered by an evidence technician to test the liquid stain on the pants.
Yasmin's grandmother doesn't know where she is.
We told her we'd like to speak with Yasmin, and we left our business card with her, and then we left.
Word hits the street that the police are looking for Yasmin. But the rumors are already running wild.
There was a lot of things being said in that neighborhood. Like I said, everything was close. It was a lot of talk in the neighborhood of this girl going around pretty much bragging about it. I don't think any of us knew about Yasmin. I've never met her. So I didn't know, I had no recollection of this lady whatsoever. I didn't know who she was, to be honest. I didn't know anything of her into this situation. But we were looking for her, essentially. Like, we were trying to get her in custody. We were trying to figure out what this woman was.
Time was very important because we were afraid that she might try to flee the state or flee whatever, because she has to know she's a wanted person.
It appears that Yasmin does know that she is being sought after by police.
Several hours later, we were contacted by Yasmin saying she was willing to speak with us.
After getting that call from Yasmin, police immediately went to her home and arrested her.
She was very cooperative, turned herself in. Yasmin was transported to detective headquarters where she was placed in an interview room and placed under video and audio surveillance. She was Mirandized, stated she understood her rights, and she was willing to speak with the detectives.
Detectives have a lot of questions for Yasmin.
In my entire career, there are very few incidences of people dying from ingestion of bleach.
It's just not understandable. Bleach. This is what killed this man. Bleach was poured down his throat. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And who the hell would do this to someone?
Due to the totality of the circumstances, I believed what we had was a domestic relationship murder with a crime of passion. Several times you have murders and somebody gets shot once or twice, but when you come across somebody who has an intimate relationship with someone and they're hurt, they sometimes conduct what we call overkill. They will stab a victim several times, not just once or twice. They will continue to shoot them, not just once or twice. And when you have a caustic substance used in a murder like this, all signs would lead to believe that they had some type of romantic relationship with each other. Yasmin's statement to Darius's friends that he shouldn't put his hands on me sounds like payback to me.
After Darius Ellis dies from forcibly ingesting bleach, Chicago detectives question the main suspect, his girlfriend, Yasmin Elder.
So once the police arrest Yasmin, they ask her what was the relationship like between her and Darius.
They were on and off, they saw each other, but it wasn't serious. About a month before the incident, they decided to get serious, and they were in fact engaged to be married.
Yasmin told detectives that she and Darius had been dating on and off since 2015, but at the beginning of 2017, they finally decided to get engaged.
But instead of happiness, the decision brought instant drama.
Darius and Yasmin both were experiencing some insecurities around the relationship. Even though they were supposed to be committed, they both were in fear that there were other people involved on both of their sides. Yasmin believed that Darius was a ladies' man. Darius had caught Yasmin texting an ex-boyfriend and had some insecurities around that. Yasmin was also very upset that in 2 years she had never met his family and they were about to get married.
It just became a toxic relationship. He just became so much more enraged, so much more jealous. He would accuse her of cheating, and sometimes he got physically abusive, according to Yasmin.
Yasmin told police that the physical violence had increased over the last 2 weeks prior to the incident. That in fact, 5 days prior to the incident, while at a laundromat with Darius, that Darius caught her texting her ex-boyfriend on her cell phone. Darius became so enraged that he choked her.
When detectives asked Yasmin why she didn't report any of this domestic abuse before, she said that she was under supervision for a fight that she had unrelated to this incident and was afraid that police just wouldn't believe her.
She says that by the night of his death, tension between them was high.
Yasmin told police that on the night of the incident, Darius had picked her up around 12:30 a.m. on the morning of March 6th. During their ride home, Darius became enraged because she was in fact texting the ex-boyfriend again during the ride.
He pulled over, came out of the car, ripped her out of the car and threw her to the ground. Yasmin says she got up again, but he grabbed her and threw her down a second time. Yasmin told detectives that she was screaming for help and that Darius picked her up and forced her back into the van.
And
grabbed both her arms, punched her in the thigh and in the back of the head. Darius pulled over, and now it was a physical altercation. He was punching her, he tried getting on top of her, but Yasmin grabbed his hair and was pulling him and eventually got him on the ground between the seats.
Yasmin stated she was able to overpower Darius by pulling him to the ground by his hair and then pinning him there with her knee using her weight. She also made a statement that she said at this time, I was winning the fight.
Saying things like, I'm winning this fight, implies that in this moment, Yasmin felt vindicated in what she was doing. She felt like, you know, maybe you've done this to me before and this time it's not gonna happen. I'm gonna win, I'm gonna stand up for myself.
When police asked Yasmin how she was able to overpower Darius, she told police that she weighs 207 pounds. And at the time of Darius's death, he weighed 130 pounds.
The fight continued into the back seat of the minivan, at which time Darius swung a plastic bottle at her that she said contained bleach, but she blocked it.
Yasmin wasn't sure if Darius was attempting to hit her with a bleach bottle or attempting to splash her with the bleach.
Yasmin feels like she has to fight. She's in survivor mode. So while Yasmin's knee is still on Darius's waist, she's able to gain control of the bleach and take it away from Darius. At this point, she starts to pour the bleach all into Darius's mouth.
Yasmin related she then jumped out of the minivan and heard him gasping and trying to breathe. And he called out to her, I can't breathe, I need to go to the hospital.
She, despite hearing this, continues to walk away. And a moment later, she states that he got behind the wheel and drove off.
Yasmin related that she walked for a little while and then got onto a bus and went back to her neighborhood.
After all the questioning during the interrogation, it never came across to me that Yasmin was fearful for her life. It almost seemed like she was in control of this fight the entire time and could put an end to it anytime she wanted to. Not once during the interrogation did she ever say she was fighting in self-defense. She said, he started hitting me, and I fought back, and I was winning.
She, in fact, was proud of the fact that she had won the fight.
In Chicago PD's Area South Detective Division, Yasmin Elder has just admitted that she was in a physical fight with her fiancé the night he died.
Yasmin stated as the fight went on that Darius grabbed a plastic bottle containing bleach and he went to hit her with it. She stated she was able to obtain this bottle somehow at which time she used it to pour into his mouth.
Yasmin claims the fight came after suffering abuse at Darius's hands in the weeks and minutes before the fight.
She told police that she had gotten bleach in her eyes, that Darius had bit her on her hand, and that he had punched her in her thighs as well as had hit her in the back of the head.
After speaking with Yasmin and the statement she made about receiving injuries from Darius, we photographed various parts of her body, and none of the photographs revealed any type of injury. There was one bruise on her thigh, and we also noticed a red mark on her hand that we believed was a burn from a caustic substance.
There are no bite marks on her body. There are no obvious signs of a struggle. There's nothing around her eyes to substantiate these claims.
Nor is there any proof that Darius ever laid a hand on her.
We didn't see anything that would indicate that happened. And why hadn't she ever made a police report before? Why hadn't she told anyone else before?
But the most powerful moment in the interview with Yasmin comes when detectives present her with the flip phone Darius held up in his final dying moments.
When presented with the evidence of the flip phone, Yasmin agreed that it was indeed her phone. Darius, in essence, solved his own murder.
Investigators now believe that Darius's initial claim he was attacked by two men was an attempt to save Yasmin.
When he thinks he's going to survive, he wants help, but he's not going to tell him that was his fiancée, Yasmin. So he says there was two black guys who held me down. He didn't think he was going to die. He just wanted help. He didn't want her locked up.
But then Darius realized his situation was more serious than he thought.
Didn't want to get her in trouble at first, but as he's dying and he realizes he's dying, he then tells the truth. The state's attorney's office interviewed witnesses and reviewed reports and all the evidence, and on May 7th, 2017, charged Yasmin Elder with one count of first-degree murder.
First-degree murder charges in Illinois carry a minimum of 20 years in prison up to 60 years in prison. First-degree murder requires intent.
Set at $1 million.
I do recall my brother letting me know. He did make us all aware that she was in custody.
Darius's family is stunned by the truth and by Yasmin's claims that she and Darius were engaged.
If they were planning to be married, one of us would have known. Darius is close to his siblings. Me, my brothers, we all spoke frequently on the phone. Whether we seen each other or not, we talked. We were very close. So if he was planning any type of engagement or proposing to someone, I definitely feel like we would have known. You say that you guys are engaged and you were shopping for a wedding dress and all of these great things. Why would you want to poison someone that you love?
On February 13th, 2020, Yasmin pleads guilty to second-degree murder.
The negotiation between her lawyer and the prosecutors in this case resulted in a plea agreement of 15 years, which was 5 years below the maximum sentence that could be had in second degree.
We held up our end of the bargain as the Chicago Police Department. We did a thorough investigation. We put the facts together, and we put a person in prison who committed the murder.
When Yasmin ran into Darius's friend, what she told the friend was that Darius should not have put his hands on me. That what happened to him was payback for what he had in fact done to her.
I think that her response of he shouldn't have put his hands on me was a person that is trying to justify something that they did. Like, no one has proof of Darius ever putting his hands. She didn't have any markings on her body. She didn't have any bruises, any of those things. This is a strong man. If he's putting his hands on you, you will have something to show for it. You had none of that. So at that point, I think that it was her way of just giving people a reason. Oh, this is why I did it. So it could be justified maybe as payback. This is why I did it. But I really feel like it's not payback from him abusing her. I think it's payback from him denying her and her being jealous of what he had going on.
Not once did I ever feel that she felt guilty about what happened.
But for the people who love Darius, the justice is short-lived.
Yasmin Elder received time credit for serving 31 months prior to her trial and was released on parole in May 2024.
She should have not only served 6.5 years. She killed my brother in cold blood.
In spite of Yasmin's release, the Ellis family continues to honor Darius's memory.
You lose a lot when you lose someone, and the Inglewood community, Darius's family, they all lost a great human being.
He embodied love. Just know he would have been great. He would have been the amazing person he always was.
Darius was only 26 years old. Imagine when you were 26, you got a whole life left to live. And he also leaves behind a fatherless 5-year-old.
He was so determined. He was passionate about the things he was good at. And I think he would be an exceptional father. And I'm still making sure I keep his name alive. And I plan to do even more in the future. I'm just gonna keep going, like we were always taught. Never give up.